Hello, and welcome back to Specimen, the Sociologist. If you couldn't tell by the title of this podcast, I have a very corny way of introducing myself. That is, Jessamine rhymes with specimen, but with a J. And I'm a budding sociologist who's on a quest to figure out how can science be used as a tool to stabilize our social interactions. This platform leverages sociological theories and storytelling to equip listeners with a fresh perspective on their lived experiences. Per tradition, we're going to kick today's episode off with a business spotlight. This is an opportunity to showcase a small business that is ready to share their work with the world. And today, it goes to none other than Frida, owned by Erica Veziquez June, a vintage store for the modern person. I met My Sweet Erica probably about a year ago, and over time, it has been a true honor to watch her grow. She has a dashing personality with a dynamic eye for fashion, as well as she has a deep love for her family and friends, which is quite contagious and actually spills over into her everyday adventures. Unlike any other person that I met before, Erica brings the essence of her clients out with fashionable pieces and makes them truly feel seen. So if you are ever in Seattle, make sure to stop by Frida and support this Mexicana's wildest dream. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode titled To All of the Friends I Loved Before. In this cheeky episode, we'll be diving into the science behind friendships and we'll be leveraging the social exchange theory. From there, I'll share a few brief stories about the wins and losses that I've experienced in friendships, the principle of reciprocity, and how to show up as the healthiest version of yourself for others. So turn the volume up and let's get into today's episode. I snagged this title from the 2018 American teen rom-com called To All the Boys I Loved Before. This film follows the story of Laura Jane, a high school girl who writes letters to all of her past loves and keeps them in her closet. However, things shift for Laura as her younger sister discovers the letters and mistakenly sends them in the mail. Now, Laura's life is thrown into pure chaos, and she has to address her foregone loves one by one. And if I can be completely honest, this story hits a little close to home. About a year and a half ago, I embarked on a deep spring clean of my house. And during this time, I began to sort through every single box that I had from elementary school, middle school, high school, and beyond. And amidst those items, I found an old vintage suitcase of mine filled to the brim with handwritten letters that I had received over the years. I found letters from old friends, from old crushes, from mentors, and from my parents and family members. But amidst those, I also found letters that I had just never sent. Letters that were words unspoken that I should have sent to someone, but I just never did. But anywho, out of all of that, the most challenging ones to read were those written by former friends, people who once held such a special place in my heart that no longer were there. And what should have been a brief sorting of the suitcase began the journey of processing old relationships and the different versions of myself, which got me thinking, what if I wrote a podcast about the sociology behind friendships and call it To All the Friends That I Loved Before? And that is what got me here to this current time. To bring sociology back into the conversation, we are going to leverage the social exchange theory to best paint the picture of how sociologists view friendships. Now, this theory suggests that people form friendships based on a cost benefit analysis, where individuals evaluate the rewards that they will receive compared to the cost of investment. So essentially, people choose their friends to best maximize personal gain. And I know what you're probably thinking, like, wow, Jess, that's kind of like a harsh theory to attach to the concept of friendships. But I believe that it still provides a good foundation. So let's go ahead and break this theory down just a little bit more. The social exchange theory was founded by George C. Homans, but most comprehensively developed by John Thibaut, Harold Kelly, Peter Blau, Richard Emerson, and Claude Levi Strauss. Now, I don't expect you to remember any of their names, but you should remember this about these theorists. On average, they would compare all human interactions with the financial market. Unlike economic exchange, however, the elements of social exchange are rather varied and cannot be reduced to a single quantitative exchange rate, such as a market price. So, the way that these gentlemen view relationships, they view it through two lenses, there being a cost and there being a reward. The cost is the element of a relationship which has a negative value to a person. For example, the money that one spends to sustain a romantic relationship. Now, for rewards, this is the element of a relationship which has a positive value for a person. For example, the companionship of a friend. These gentlemen go on to say that people calculate the overall worth of a relationship by subtracting the cost of that relationship from its reward. So, based on this formula, we can see why people pursue different relationships or friendships in their life. And here are a few examples to be exact. The first example would be security, that people are willing to invest their time into a relationship knowing that they're going to receive security as an outcome, because these folks prioritize stability and assurance in their choices. Another example would be social approval. These people are willing to invest into relationships because they value acceptance and validation from others, and they kind of want to be the it girl. The third example would be equal status, that these folks will choose to enter into a relationship because they believe that they are going to share certain level of living with those around them. So they prefer interactions with those of similar standing. For example, I think of India and their caste system, how this is a hierarchy based off of people's, I believe, ethnic backgrounds as well as like their socioeconomic status. So these individuals truly date within their caste. And that would be an example of equal status for the pursuit of relationships. Now, there's far more to it, but as a very, very, very elementary version. And the last example is actually my favorite example, and this is autonomy, that all costs and rewards being equal, an individual will choose the alternative from which they expect to receive the most autonomy. So they would rather pursue relationships and friendships that allow them to be quite independent and have control over their life. And for example, I would say, think of how queer people oftentimes have a chosen family. These are relationships that they continue to develop over a lifetime that are accepting of their sexuality, of their beliefs, and of who they are as an individual. And it's in that chosen family that, again, they have that end result, which is autonomy. Now, hopefully, these examples have painted a greater picture of how various relationships are formed on the premise of cost benefit analysis. But to bring this theory full circle, I'm going to complement it with a personal story and a few life lessons that I learned. For those of you who didn't know, I attended Loyola University, New Orleans. It is a beautiful Jesuit institute situated in the heart of New Orleans. Now, my senior year, I served as the student body president. And if I can be completely honest with you guys, this felt like working a full 40. Like on top of attending classes and beginning to do my research my senior year, I was in meetings with the board of trustees. I was leading a team. I was overseeing budget. It was like a lot of moving parts and pieces. But I will say I loved every moment of it, or most of it. Anywho, halfway into my senior year, COVID-19 came on the scene and the university pivoted fully online. And while the pandemic did bring about hardships for a great number of individuals, it still had some sweet and sobering moments in between. And as the pandemic hit, my busy social calendar quickly dwindled down. It felt like New Orleans was experiencing a mass exodus of its college students. My roommates moved out, and my cabinet and I went fully online with the rest of our leadership term. And so, as my life was thriving and bustling, it quickly turned into a party of one. And I couldn't help but experience, ironically, a bit of relief that this was the first time in a long time that I was able to rest from having a busy schedule and to finish my undergraduate career in a somewhat peaceful manner. Now, I will say there was a lot of instability in the sense of what the future will hold for a young grad, as well as, again, I was still serving as a student body president. So there was a huge shift in responsibilities. With that being said, I began to socially sober up. And this started the process of really reflecting on my relationships. And I guess I did operate from the cost benefit analysis, figuring out, oh, like what relationships do I want to move forward with and which ones do I want to kind of pull back from. And I will say this, I didn't like scroll through my contact list and start to categorize people. Rather, it was just when random moments popped up, I reflected on the quality of those relationships. And again, it's not judgment, it's an assessment. Because my pastor once told me, he said, Jasmine, every person is equally valuable to God, but not every person adds equal value. And so I had to really ask myself, I'm like, oh, like what kind of, like, where was I relationally speaking? And during that process, I came up with three random categories. The first category was the assholes. And yes, you heard me correctly, assholes, not arseholes. This was a group of individuals who had the title of friendship, but more times than not, they only called upon me for emergencies, for crises, for financial assistance, or to emotionally dump, which these things aren't negative, but through a cost benefit analysis, they were taxing on they were taxing on you, girl. Anywho, the second category goes to mutual friends. Not mutual friends in the sense of us having a shared connection with another person, rather, us having mutual interests and mutual values. And this group of folks, it was just easy going. The way that we would communicate, the way we would connect, it just was really good. And it just reflected the principle of generosity. Now, the third group is a unique group, and this is probably my favorite one. These are the friends that I will have in my heart forever. Whether we were close in one season and we check in every blue moon, or they are an individual who you can go 2 years without talking, but they pick up as if no time has passed. It is just always a good time because they are a good egg. So this category is called dun, 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 the good eggs. As I began to, take the pandemic day by day, really process my relationships, what could have been a perception that there was a recession of relationships because I physically wasn't in contact with people, it actually became a reset for how I defined friendship and how I wanted to move forward. And so as I began to reflect, it kind of showed me how I showed up in these friendships, and it challenged me to become a better person. Where it's like, hey, Justman, who is it that you're becoming, and how are you empowering other people in the process? Because I would say, well, yes, the theory suggests that friendships are based on a cost benefit analysis. What they don't consider is the principle of generosity, where it's better to give than to receive. And I find that the healthiest relationships that I find myself in, we both have that mutual principle of generosity, where it's like, oh no, we love to give our time and encouragement and even the intangible things such as forgiveness or correction. And with that being said, I was like, actually, if I want healthier friendships, I'm not just going to sit here and like examine people one by one. I'm going to exuberate those things. And I want them to have to reciprocate that. And it doesn't have to be in the same way, right? But it does have to be, again, that mutual love and investment into another person. Which brings me to the next part of this podcast, which is how can I help you go through a relational reset as well? I want this to be an opportunity where you can reflect on how you define friendships with a sprinkle of sociology. To do that, I'm going to give you a few guiding points. The first point is this: if you want better friends, you have to become that better friend. And that makes me think of, what is it? There's a scripture in the Bible, and it's a King James Version, and I believe it's Proverbs 18:24. Don't quote me on this, but I believe it says, "A man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there's a friend that sticketh closer than a brother." Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. So the first part of that, what I love is it really highlights the fact that you enforce the standard that you set for relationships that you engage in. If you want friends that communicate well, if you want friends that are reliable, if you want friends that are creative and expressive, then you get to be that and you get to become that. And whether you believe in the word of God or not, I believe the principle still remains the same. You enforce a standard that you receive in relationships. And as you begin to reflect on who it is that you are as a friend, you want to make sure that you have a true view of yourself, right? Just can't focus on the good parts, but you should also focus on the unhealthy parts or the underdeveloped parts of you. And the way to effectively do that is to stop and pause and examine how you are received by other people. Are they better off after they left your presence? Were they comfortable being honest with you about, good and not so good things? Did they affirm your relationship with positive words? For example, I'm blessed enough to have a strong inner circle of folk who are really kind to tell me where they are. They are so sweet. They'll encourage me. They'll write me a handwritten letter. They'll tell me, Justin, I'm so excited for this next season of life for you. I believe in you. You got this. And on that same note, they can still say, hey, Justin, like you were kind of running late today. And I would love for you to prioritize the time that we set for meeting with one another. So it's really cool to have friends who are communicative in a healthy way because there's a difference between communicating well and just being hypercritical. There's a way to deliver something. But anywho, back to the podcast. As you begin to reflect on how people receive you, you become more aware of how you show up truly in friendships. And that can be the turning point for how you raise the standard of what it means to be a friend and to become that friend. Now, as you go through this process, you realize that you're going to get to a point where, there are some friendships I no longer want to be a participant in. How do I gracefully exit? Which leads me to point two. There is a way to gracefully walk away that isn't rooted in avoidance or devaluing another person. So, to kind of bring this full circle, I'm going to leverage a story. And I'll say this, I have been guilty in the past of either ghosting a person or allowing distance to serve as a subtle tool separation. But what I realized is the most honorable and effective way to remove yourself is to be direct with the other person. And to bring that point home, I'm going to leverage a quick story. But before we do that, I'm going to take a swig of coffee. Mm-mm-mm. Now, if you know me, I love to drink my coffee black. And no, not because it's Black History Month, but because I just love it. I feel like it's like my go-go juice. It's like my jet fuel. That's what I call it. Like I feel like when I drink it, I'm like ready to like fly to the moon and back. Anywho, back to the story. This story actually involves a person that I dated for a little bit, but then realized it'd be better that we were friends. And so as we transitioned from lovers to friends, I realized that we just didn't have a lot in common. And it wasn't as if anything was unhealthy or they just weren't good. It just was simply like, I think it's best if we properly part ways and do things differently. And I can recall it was like a random Tuesday. I called them and we chopped it up for the first 20 minutes. And I ushered in the conversation of saying, hey, I'm actually going to take a step back from this friendship. I was transparent about where I was, how I was showing up in that relationship, and how moving forward, I just desired that separation. I also affirmed who they were. I said it was beautiful getting to know them, to know their friends, to know their family, as well as how excited I was for their budding career. But despite, pursuing all what the world would consider success, also continuing to do the things that you love, which is being in nature. And yeah, becoming like the best version of yourself, dude. But anyway, we ended the conversation on good spirits as well as on boundaries. I told them that I would be unfollowing them on social media and removing their phone number from my contact list because we don't block around here. We don't block unless someone's harassing you, and that's not okay. But I said that if you ever ran into each other again, let's start over. And that might seem kind of soppy, the conversation was far more casual. And I realized that when leaving a relationship or leaving a friendship, the words that you say are very powerful and they do leave an imprint on the other person. And so to do that effectively is you identify the reasons and why you're leaving that friendship. You take responsibility for your departure. You affirm the values of the other person and you set up healthy boundaries if needed, which we're going to go on a tangent really fast about boundaries. Boundaries don't exist unless the other person knows about it. If you tell yourself mentally that like you're going to go no contact with a person, whether that's turning the notification off on Instagram so you don't see the post or their stories, or if you avoid their phone calls, or if you say, hey, I'll follow up, but you fail to, that's not a boundary, that's avoidance. And that doesn't honor the other person, nor does that give them clarity on where you guys relationally stand. And again, as a person who served as a professional admin for a few years, it's never a calendar conflict. It's always a matter of priority. And as the cherry on top for this boundary tangent, I have another story, which, if you guys can tell, I'll make Mary Poppins with these stories. So please, dude, get ready. Anywho, this story took place again in college. I had a roommate of mine who, at one point, I would consider to be my best friend. And then, over the span of our lease, we just kind of became strangers. They just pulled away from shared social commitments and from the friend group, and we just did things differently. And at first, it was unsettling because I felt like that one song, "Now you're just somebody that I used to know, somebody." But anywho, it just felt weird. It just felt weird. I was like, how are we like besties? And then it was just like, I don't even like I know you anymore. But anywho, I just slowly got over it because if someone is actively choosing not to be in a relationship with you, that's not your responsibility. So I went along being my bubbly self. And crazy enough, thinking back to it, younger Jess, go girl, I was still generous towards this person. I respected our mutual space. I would ask if they ever wanted to tag along for a grocery run, and I would initiate small talk. Because just because we're not friends, it doesn't mean that it has to be awkward. So about a year into us just kind of, just being roommates, no longer besties, they asked if they could take me out for lunch. And I was like, dude, let's go for it. So we sat down over Mexican food and they apologized for avoiding me for an entire year and that they missed our friendship as well as they wanted to build back that trust. And in that moment, there were a lot of rushing emotions that came back because while I am very casual right now with the story, during that time period, it was really emotionally hard for me. Like to have someone who literally is avoiding you and who live in the same house, like you can feel really low about yourself. And there were moments that I did cry myself to sleep. And there were moments that I just felt that like I wasn't a good friend or that my friendships weren't stable. And I remember sitting there with them and I said, hey, thank you so much for, apologizing. However, I don't want to move forward with the friendship. You can't ignore a person for an entire year and expect them to be waiting for you on the other side. That during this time period, I began to reflect on like my friendships and which ones that I wanted to water. And I just kind of began to do my own thing. And the last thing I had said to them was, we shared the hallway together. Every day was an opportunity to have a conversation with me about where you were. And that was a choice you made. And so this is a result of your decision making. But I said that we can be more casual around the house if we ever are out and about in the same social group. Like there's no animosity towards one another. And so we both cried a little bit and then we both laughed a little bit. And then we went on our way back home because just because we, again, aren't close friends, it doesn't mean that we still can't be supportive of one another. And I still don't talk to them to this day, but I hope they're doing absolutely well in life and that they are pursuing their wildest dreams. Now, on that same note of reconnecting with folks, we're going to shift gears and talk about how to restructure friendships in a sustainable way. Because one thing I forgot to mention was with the first story I shared about my senior year, it being socially very active, was I had a lot of quote unquote friends. And as Spider Man would say, with great power comes great responsibility. And friendships are the greatest relationships you can honestly have in life. And I found that I was just kind of overexhausting myself by being extremely supportive to like a large group of people. And I didn't have a strong sense of, oh, this is my inner circle, or these are like my friends that I casually see in class, or these are the friends that like I'm going to pour time, attention, effort into. Like I just didn't really have like a structure on how to steward and to be well balanced with my relationships, which is what leads us to our next point. How can we get a clear perspective on friendships? This is something that I believe every person needs to do at some point in their life. And so we're going to do that together now as a team. I recently stumbled upon this article that categorizes friendships into 4 levels: acquaintance, casual friendship, close friendship, and intimate friendship. Level 1, acquaintance. These type of relationships may look like friends of a friend or someone you may not truly know yet, but every friendship in our life begins as an acquaintance, and it does take a great deal of effort and strong connection to move out of this level, which takes us to level 2, casual friendship. At this point, we may know more than what the eye can see. Maybe we know more of this person's likes and dislikes. What are their career aspirations? What's their hometown? And these casual friends can take on the form of classmates, your church buddies, people you see out and about on town. Like you guys have enough shared interests that your lives will overlap, and that creates, again, casual friendships. The third level is close friends. This includes the concept of fellowship. So these people are folks that produce a safe space for you to express yourself, that these spaces promote personal growth, that they know a lot about you and you feel comfortable sharing things with them. And these are the people that you choose rather than coincidentally being in the same space. The fourth level is intimate friendship. This level is essentially your best friend, your chosen family, your strong inner core. These might be the first people we think of when we hear the word friend. They may challenge our thoughts and actions with pure intentions to help us thrive and succeed. They often pour into your life because they care about you as a person and they don't seek anything out for their own personal gain. Now, while this article discussed 4 levels, I'm going to throw in a fifth. This is the one that we talked about earlier. This is the good egg level, where there's no ranking nor defined category for this group of people. This level consists of people who I would say I just love. Like, there's just so much sincere love for them. Whether we're close in one season, or we check in every blue moon, or they're an individual who you can go 2 years without talking to, but then pick up right as if nothing happened. It's just always a good time because they are a good egg. Nevertheless, what I love about these friendship levels is that they are all equally important on how we build a stable social life. Because again, you are going to have so many social interactions throughout the day that you want to make sure that you show up as your most authentic self. And to do that, you have to know how to steward relationships. Now, there may be a season when a person bops up to level 4, or they may shimmy down to level 2, or maybe they get tossed into the good egg section. And that's okay for relationships to naturally shift over time as long as the mutual love is still present. And that is why this podcast is called To All the Friends That I Loved Before, because love is the foundation for how we connect, correct, and continue forward in life. Because what I don't want you to do is to take this paradigm of how to build various levels of friendships in your life and use that in a negative sense. Like perhaps someone was mean to you and you're like, you know what? You just dropped down from a close friend to an acquaintance. I'm never talking to you again. Like, no, like, don't be rude, but build a stable way of how you engage with folks around you. Anywho, this leads me to the last part of the conversation, and that is to take risks in relationships. Every person will experience a friend breakup in their life. Every person will experience being on the short end of the stick when it comes to not being treated well in a relationship, but that doesn't have to define the quality that can come from living a life with and for other people. And in the wise words of Lady Gaga, she said, "Don't be a drag, just be a queen." Because life is dull without relationships. And you're going to have to be willing to get back in the game and to take risks on building friendships, on becoming a better friend yourself. Because here's what a 85-year-old Harvard study can confirm. In 1938, few researchers embarked on a decades-long study to find out what makes us happy in life. The researchers gathered healthy records from 724 participants from all over the world, and they asked detailed questions about their lives at 2-year intervals. Contrary to what you might think, it's not career achievement, money, exercise, or a healthy diet. The most consistent finding they learned over the 85 years is this: positive relationships keep us happier, healthier, and help us live longer. So the greatest gift that you can truly receive in life is a friendship and your ability to love those around you. So that's why I say take a risk. If you miss a person, reach out to them. If a friend hurts you, forgive them and move forward. If you hurt someone, forgive yourself. Make the proper adjustments and move along. Shoot your shot romantically, even if it fails. Write love letters, send a cheeky voice memo, ask for help. Like, truly come out of your shell and just live life fully. And that is where we go back to the social exchange theory. Well, these theories would suggest that we form our friendships off of a cost benefit analysis. I would argue that this theory does not account for the principle of generosity. Earlier, I mentioned that if you want friends, you have to be friendly. And what if we as society took a generous approach to pursuing others? What would it be like if we sought the best out of a person or helped them along this journey called life? And imagine even being on the receiving end of that generosity. How much more would you be willing to give in a relationship knowing that your cup will be filled by others? Now, that is a world that I would love to live in and one that I'm currently building. So, on that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. Hopefully, you gained a new perspective on the social exchange theory, as well as you leave the show committed to building healthier friendships from a pure place of generosity, and in return, a greater society for us all. Next week, we're going to celebrate my favorite holiday in the entire world, which is Valentine's Day. I will be discussing the sociology behind romantic partnerships and the power of embracing a lifestyle of singleness. Now, when I say singleness, I'm not talking about a relational status. I'm talking about being single-minded in all of your decisions. And from that place, that you can build a healthy love life. Until then, be merry, visit my girl Erica at Frida, and as always, have a powerful day.